Hello and welcome again. This is another video for elttraining.com and I'm Jo Gikongha. This month we're going to have a look at some warmers and fillers. So I've got 3 thoughts for you and 3 practical ideas. I hope that they're helpful. This talk was inspired by a couple of input sessions that I saw recently from a couple of CELTA trainers in other centres. So thank you very much to Nesma and to Spencer. So what is a warmer or a filler? Well, these are usually fairly short activities. They might just be around 5 minutes or even less. But they're something upbeat, something active, something to get the learners energised. They might be completely unrelated to the rest of the lesson. They might be at the beginning of the lesson, perhaps to get people energised when they first come into the room. They might be at the end of the lesson to send people off with a sort of a positive frame of mind. They might be somewhere in the middle of the lesson where you're trying to change the focus from one thing to another or to re-energise people perhaps. The next question, of course, is why use one? What's the purpose of these? Well, the main one, I guess, is to animate learners, to engage them, to give them some energy. This is always, I think, a good thing in learning if people have got that oomph to want to learn. Another good reason is perhaps to develop rapport. Now that might be between you and them, or it might be between the learners themselves. It can really help, I think, if people are having fun together to develop rapport. Another good reason, particularly at the beginning of lessons, is to wait for the stragglers to arrive. You do want to have some purposeful activity at the beginning of a lesson, but if you're teaching adults, it's likely there's going to be some latecomers. So having something purposeful, but not related to the rest of the lesson perhaps, can be useful in the first 5 or 10 minutes. And it might be that you want a break between stages, especially if you've done some quite heavy work, some difficult work which required a lot of concentration. You might want something a bit lighter to break up those stages. Be careful. It's arguable, but I personally think that everything you do in the classroom should have a language aim. So my feeling is that warmers and fillers should also have a language aim, and they're not just about increasing the energy in the classroom. So that's maybe something to keep an eye on. So my thought number 1 is this: use the learners as a resource. The learners are a really rich resource. They've got lots of things to tell you, to tell each other, and they'll enjoy doing that. So use them. This is a really simple activity, my first idea, and I call it Ask Me, Ask You. All you need to do is to give the learners a piece of paper each, a small piece of paper, and ask them to write on it a question or 2, questions that they could ask anybody in the class. An example might be something like this, or a follow-up like this. Then what you ask them to do, you could go around and monitor and check that their questions were okay if you wanted to. And then you simply ask each learner, the learners generally, to stand up, go and ask a partner their question, and then answer it obviously, and then they swap their questions. And then I take your question and I go and ask somebody else your question, and then I swap with them, so that you're always asking a different question. This works really well at all levels, because clearly the kind of questions that you ask the learners ask each other, will be appropriate to the level that they're able to ask at. So it works really well in pretty much all classes, and learners like it, especially at the beginning of classes when classes are getting to know each other. This can work really, really well. Idea number 2 is vocabulary recycling. This is really, really important. If you learn something once, you're never going to remember it, probably not going to remember it. you need to have things repeated. So I always keep a stack of cards with words and phrases, for example like this, that we've had in class previously. As I say, I might have a collocation, like a heavy smoker. I might have single words, in which case I'd usually put at least the word class in there. If the pronunciation is a bit difficult, I might put the phonemic symbols on there too. But very simple, just small cards with the words on. You can use these in all sorts of ways. The easiest is just to give learners a card or two each and get them to hide them from their partner and try and describe the word. So this is a word which means very good. It's another word for brilliant or amazing, and they have to guess that it's fantastic. When you've got these cards, and there are lots of things you can do with them, my thought number 2 for this is that little surprises mean a lot and make a big difference to how motivated people are. So if you've got these kind of cards, that's good. But if you give learners these cards in an envelope that they have to open, somehow that really small extra thing makes a big difference to how excited they are about finding out what's in the envelope. If you stick an occasional envelope under a chair and ask them to find it, that makes a huge difference, or under a table too. Find the envelope and then open it and then do the recycling cards. Just very small things like that somehow really add a little bit of magic to a lesson. Another way you can do something like this is perhaps number your learners. Put all the cards in the middle face down, number the learners around the table, and then give them a dice. They throw the dice, and whose ever number comes up, they're the person who has to ask the question. Really simple things, but learners really like them. They usually respond very, very well to this kind of thing. So we're on to thought number 3. And thought number 3 is that a bit of friendly competition really increases the energy in a class and is always good. I say always. My experience is that with teaching teenagers, sometimes they get overly competitive and then it maybe doesn't work quite so well. But certainly with teaching adults, and to limits as well with children, friendly competition is very, very helpful. Team games especially work very well. They take the onus off the individual and make it a lot more fun. So my idea number 3 is a real old favourite, and one you probably have come across before, and it's called Backs to the Board. So on this game, you have 2 teams. Give teams team names. That always helps. Ask them to choose their own names, perhaps names of animals. You might have the lions and the tigers, but let them choose. And somebody will ask to call their team the monkeys or the caterpillars or something, and it will, engender some fun into the class. One person from each team needs to come to the front and to sit with their back to the board so they can't see the board. And then you write up on the board. It could be some vocabulary that you're recycling. It could be a sentence like this, perhaps using some sort of grammar that you've used during the lesson. And then the other members of the team have to describe this sentence to their teammate without using any of those words, obviously. So with this, they could say, it's the pronoun. It's not he, it's the girl, she. Yes, it's the present continuous. She's doing it now. It's this, and maybe they mime standing up. They have to describe it, and the first person who guesses it gets a point for their team. It's a really good idea if you play this game to make sure that for every round you swap the person in the hot seat, so that it's not always the same person who's got to guess. That makes it much more fun too. So I hope that you've enjoyed that short video and that these few ideas will be helpful for you. Look forward to seeing you again next month. Bye bye.